Hello everybody, George Kenner. Good to see you again. This is a follow-up video to another video that I did on the Aeon Nova and Supernova series. Now the Aeon Nova is a little bit bigger than the Mira and has a couple of upgrades in it. One of them is it has an over the front of the table airflow, which will clear out any smoke that is around the lens during the engrave process and make it even cleaner and clearer. Anytime that the laser is burning through that smoke, it has the opportunity to re-impregnate back onto the material that you're using. So that across the flow is really very important. If you're looking to buy, you'd probably want to find out if the laser that you're considering has that feature if you really want professional results. Now the Supernova, what it does is it has both the glass and an RF tube. The RF tube is a little more precise, smaller beam size, and better for things like photorealistic engraving. Now, what Aeon did was they combined the two into one machine. In the other video, I explained a bunch more of that. There'll be a link to that at the end, and I'll link it down in the comments also. But this is a follow-up. I want everyone to know I want you to have the best tool. So I got on the phone with the sales manager because I'm thinking about upgrading my Mira and getting one of the Supernovas in the smallest footprint because I'm in a two-car garage. I'm a serious hobbyist, but I don't really want to manufacture any products for sale. So this is the scope of the interview. I also ask everyone to come into the Facebook group Laser Freedom. You're allowed to say anything in there. If you're another manufacturer and you have something to say that you disagree with me and you think your machine is better, please come in there and have that discussion. I do not believe in censorship. Trolls on YouTube is another thing. But if you want to come in where somebody can respond and you want to identify yourself, I want to hear what you have to say. Okay, on to Elisha Spector. I apologize for the audio quality in this, but it's a Zoom interview, but it's something you can do. You can email her. Her email address will be down in the description or the comments, and you can arrange to talk to her or anyone else on the sales staff. Ask the hard questions. Ask them about, do I really want to have an RF tube and a glass tube in my machine? Do I really need the flow-through system? Do I need the adjustable air system? Ask those questions. I wish you the best. This will be the end. There'll just be a short trailer at the end. So, Elisha, for question number one, and I've already told everybody that you were the person that aided me buy my Mira 7 Pro. And I've also told them that my girlfriend, who I'm going to call Grace, saw a video of a photorealistic engraving that was done with Aeon Supernova. And the quality that came off of it was just incredible. And she asked me how they got that. And I said they did it with an RF tube. So now generally explain the difference between a Nova and Supernova.
So they are basically the same box machine. So the size of the workspace is the same for both the Nova and the Supernova. The big difference between them is the Nova has that one really powerful glass tube, whereas the Supernova has the powerful glass tube in addition to the metal RF C02 tube as well.
Okay, so if I was going to a Supernova and I'm looking for something in the smallest footprint for me, as you know, I'm in a two-car garage, and I'm really using it. I'm just a really sophisticated hobbyist. So
very sophisticated hobby for a Supernova.
So the standard tube that comes in the just regular Nova is how many watts?
A normal Nova can come anywhere from an 80 watt all the way up to 150 watt, depending on the size of the Nova that you choose.
Okay, so now what is the wattage of the RF tube that comes in the Supernova?
You can get a 30-watt RF tube or a 60-watt RF tube.
Okay. So the power source, is the power source drive off of the same source?
Yes.
Okay, so they're both running off the same power source. Do they both run off of the same chiller?
Well, no. So the chiller for the glass tube is the water chiller. The chiller for the metal RF tube is not water based. It's just an air chiller. So the metal RF tube has its own chiller built in. That's an air chiller. So that keeps it cool. It's its own separate. It's really built into the tube itself.
Okay, so if somebody were manufacturing an RF tube machine and they didn't have a chiller, they would have an additional cost reduction. So by you adding this, I'm looking at the competitive nature of this. Do I go out and buy two machines, or do I just buy one? And then, as I pointed out to some of my friends, it seems as though this is an exceptional value. I've seen RF tubes in the same price range machine with a slightly smaller box for even a little bit more money.
It's true. Yeah. So this gives you the ability to have two machines really in one. So you're getting that powerful cutting with the glass tube, but you're also getting that super high engraving speed, up to 2000 millimeters per second, with that really super fine detail that you get out of that metal RF tube, all into one machine.
Okay, so now how do you maintain the finer detail? How do you gain that finer detail with an RF tube?
Well, the RF tube allows you to run at higher speeds with the hybrid stepper motors that are inside of the Supernova machines. It allows you to run at those higher speeds. And because of the lighter head on the Supernovas as well, it really allows you to move that laser as quickly as possible to gain those higher detailed and really keep that higher detail. So they run a little bit, it makes it create that higher detail as well.
Okay,
That
so
wasn't very good.
to get a little more technical, because I'm researching, is if we were comparing the laser striking portion, the portion of the laser, the diameter of the laser for the RF, is that smaller than the laser diameter, which is what's
It
giving
is.
you part of the photorealistic effect?
It is. And that's why you get a little bit finer detail out of the metal RF too, because the diameter of that laser is a little bit smaller. Correct.
Okay, so I would not be able to obtain the same result with a glass tube that I could with an RF tube.
Absolutely not. Right.
Okay, so now as part of our discussion when I bought my Mira, I said, what if is there any market for these things used? Well, there's a business aspect, and I know some of the people that are watching me are thinking, well, if I had a supernova, and I'm thinking, I'm just planning down the road, something happens to me, I have to sell my machine. I've got basically two machines in one box and half the footprint. So somebody in business ends up with a more functioning machine because it can do a finer detail and in less storage space. And in one illustration that I used for an RF tube, you could buy two of these machines with a slightly larger bed for less than the price of two of their machines and have double the work and basically four laser tubes.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, so what you're telling me is my research is good so far.
So far, so good, George. You're doing it.
So far, so good. Well, I was pretty amazed when I saw the photorealistic detail that came off of that piece. Now, there's some other things about this machine, and I just want to make sure: is there a pass through?
There is a full front to back pass through, and it's just a little over an inch thick for the pass through.
Okay, so I don't lose anything from the pass through if I get the RF2.
Say it one more time.
Okay, so I'm not going to lose the pass through feature if I buy the Supernova.
No, absolutely not. No. That's built into the machine, right?
Because I think the other machine that I was looking at doesn't even have a pass through.
Interesting.
Okay, so what are some of the other things that I wanted to ask? We've gone over, and I know these things to be true in the Nova, but I want to make sure that they're the same in the Supernova. There is a cross bed ventilation that's obtained with a series of fans. I don't think that's on anybody else's machine. Is that still a function in the Supernova with the RF2?
It sure is, yes. Our built-in iris system that we developed here in the United States is definitely still built into those supernovas as well. So that is a directional airflow, depending if you're cutting or engraving, is still installed into the supernovas as well. Actually developed by our VP and head engineer, Lek, who I know you know well, George. So that pulls directions, the airflow directions in different directions, depending if you're cutting and engraving. So if you're cutting, it pulls it straight down into the bed, the smoke I'm talking about, into the bed of the machine to pull that smoke as quickly as possible away from it to keep that smoke down to get that really clean cut out of it. And when you're engraving, it pulls it directly towards the back to keep that smoke away from the item so that you're keeping a really clean engrave as well. So it's a really cool feature that really only the Eon lasers have that we developed right here in the States.
So, what I'm like just almost dumbfounded about, and it's like the non-believable part, is really just for almost the price of the tube, I get two machines because I've looked at the pricing for the tube. You're basically where others are making you buy two boxes, you're putting everything in one box and really only charging for the additional part, it almost seems like.
Yeah, I mean, the smallest supernova is the Supernova 10. That's a 28 by 40-inch engraving space, workspace area. Has 8 inches of clearance. You get a 100-watt laser glass tube with a 60-watt metal RF tube. It's about 23.
Okay.
And that's the one I think you're looking at.
Yeah, what I want is I want the smallest, but I probably want a
Mhm.
100-watt and then at least a 30-watt RF tube. I don't think I need to go much more than that. It's also my understanding for like plexiglass that the RF tube makes a much better cut because it's a finer,
It's
um,
a finer point, right?
fine point. So now, do I need to go to a 60-watt if I want to cut acrylic, or will, you know, is there a ratio there, or is that something you need to really get back to me on? I know it's kind of in
I
the weeds.
really think I think the tech guys will be really better equipped to answer that question for you. What I will say is that usually when you're talking about a supernova, if somebody is really in high production, we usually steer them more towards that 60-watt RF tube just because you get that higher speed out of everything. So a 30-watt is great if you're not looking for a high production. So for yourself, George, a 30-watt probably is going to be fine. But if you're looking for production, really fast engraving all of the time, a 60-watt is probably a better equipped wattage for an RF tube just because then you're really getting that production out of it all the time. And most people that are looking at a supernova, either for a step up or for their first laser because they're going to be in high production, really probably want to do that 60-watt instead.
Okay, I think I'm coming up on, what I'm going to call technically my last question. And that is, on the Nova that I've looked at, they're very, very clean inside, meaning that none, other than the sliding gantry, the sides are very clean. There's very little area for gas or air, smoke to get trapped, to get dirty. Do I lose any of that? I'll call it design cleanliness if I go to the RF tube. Is anything structurally
Nothing.
changed that would change that?
There's nothing structurally changed about the machine at all. That clean pack design that um, we really strive on is completely the same thing with the Supernova. So all of your important parts are still protected behind all of those screens and everything to keep your maintenance down and your production up.
Okay, so it sounds like I get a box with just an RF tube, extra lenses, and I get the same. I'm basically looking at the same thing.
You're getting two for one, George. Two for one.
A two for one. Well, that was, kind of what I was looking at, and I wanted to share with my audience that, I'm not totally foolish, and that you're so easy to get a hold of. Anybody that wants to do a Zoom meeting and ask you any of these questions, they can actually reach out to the human being and ask. I am going to do a little tiny bit more follow up on the cutting of the acrylic because, and I'm going to use a fake name for my girlfriend, Grace. She loves
Poor
acrylic.
Grace.
She loves acrylic. So I guess really that's it. Thank you very much for taking a few minutes of your time with me today. And I'm going to talk to Grace. We're going to figure this out. But
I'm excited, George.
I have a feeling that there's one of these in my future. Thank you.
I do too. Thanks, George.
Bye.
Okay, bye.